there's the terrifyingly realistic possibility that Blizzard is still gonna monetize whatever skeletal remains of the PvE they're going to still put in the game. Can my Overwatch videos please stop aging this well?
Yeah, we are so excited.
Every time I think I've said all there is to say about Overwatch, Blizzard forces my hand by doing something so egregiously dumb that I have no choice but to talk about it. Because even after the PR hell they went through after announcing that Overwatch 2's PvE was mostly gutted and massively scaled back, they announced that they were charging $15 for just 3 co-op missions. Missions that are about 20 to 30 minutes in length. When I first saw this announcement, my jaw hit the floor and my tongue rolled out like a red carpet, like a goddamn Looney Tunes character. How can a company make the worst possible decision at every possible turn? But perhaps I've been too harsh. I have been looking forward to these co-op Overwatch missions for over 4 years now, and for 15 measly dollars, I could finally taste what could have been. So, I strapped on my big boy boots and played through the entirety of the PvE content with as open as a mind as I could've. And I'm here to give honest feedback about the experience. Let's see what works, what doesn't, and what exactly went wrong with Overwatch Invasion. It's no secret I'm going to be fairly critical in this video, so before I come off like a total negative Nancy, allow me to talk about something positively for a bit, because today's video is sponsored by Wanted Dead. Wanted Dead is an absolutely unhinged and amazing love letter to PS3 and Xbox 360 era action games. Published by the new publisher 110 Industries and developed by the same team behind Ninja Gaiden and Dead or Alive. And you can feel the passion and love they have for this game in every corner, whether that be the faithful gameplay or the fact that the loading screen is a super hot fire reference. You know what's cool? Guns. You wanna know what's even cooler? Katanas. You wanna know what's even cooler? Using them both at the same time, because the hack and slash gameplay lets you bounce between melee combat and gunplay seamlessly. And it feels really good and smooth to play, like butter. And I'm pretty sure most of you can relate to butter. You can go straight from chopping someone into paper mache to pumping foes with a shotgun. And the best part is the game offers a genuine challenge, like the unique boss fights that require you to change up your playstyle and study their moveset. I love games that push me to my mechanical limit like this, and I'm honor-bound to never touch in easy mode again. On top of the hack and slash madness of the gameplay, Wanted Dead also has a really cool cyberpunk and retro aesthetic. You'll have scenes of these badass cyber cops chumming around in a vintage diner. And as someone with an affinity for diners and future aesthetics, the visuals go really hard. In fact, the whole game is charming and never takes itself so seriously it's a drag. You can go straight from turning people into red pulp with a brutal finishing move to a silly ramen eating minigame, right back into chopping people's heads up. It's genuinely a blast. So if a game with hardcore action, a cool setting, charming character, fun minigames, and a great sense of humor sounds like something you'd be interested in, which you should be, I highly recommend giving Wanted Dead a shot. In a modern world of soulless games that purely exist to sap your bank account for all it's worth, it is genuinely refreshing to see such a cool passion project from developers who actually care. And it's one I'm proud to be sponsored by. I urge you to support developers who actually care. And it's a great time too, because the game is on a meaty sale right now for up to 50% off. If you're on Steam, the sale ends on September 4th. For Xbox, the sale ends on the 5th, and for PlayStation users, the sale is going to last all the way until September 13th. With all the money you saved on that discount, you can buy yourself a tasty sandwich and eat it while playing Wanted Dead. Now, that sounds like a fun night. Make sure to use the link in the description and the pinned comment and show Wanted Dead some love for sponsoring the channel. Thank you. Now, let's dive back in. So, I played through all of the Overwatch 2 PvE missions. What did I think? Yeah, it was kinda bad. Yeah, that's not exactly a big shocker, but the experience wasn't completely irredeemable either. Playing through the missions, I was very reminded of the very first PvE mode Overwatch ever added all the way back in 2016, Junkenstein's Revenge. It's a very bare-bones PvE mode where you defend a gate from incoming waves of very basic enemies. It's just something you play once a year, think, how quaint, and just go back to playing the base game. And unfortunately, despite Junkenstein's Revenge being damn near 7 years old at this point, it still serves as the basis of how the Overwatch team views PvE. A large portion of the missions just consists of moving from drab arena to drab arena, defending an objective from waves of basic enemies. There's an early section of the Toronto mission where you defend a gate from bots that, by all means, is just a slightly revamped Junkenstein. And I played Junkenstein in 2016. I'm pretty bored of it at this point. These new missions were supposed to be Blizzard shaking up the formula they established for PvE and trying out new things, but more often than not, they just fail to deliver. When that experimentation does happen, it's short-lived and not fleshed out at all. In the Gothenburg mission, near the end of the level, you gain access to these turrets you can place around the arena like a tower defense game. However, for the most part, you can treat the turrets like an afterthought, so it just goes back to defending blank objective from robots. And when you're not defending a stationary objective, it's something like escorting a slow payload or escorting 2 civilian NPCs. You just don't feel like a badass when you play these missions. It's not the balls to the walls action I was anticipating based on the trailers. You're just doing chores as an excuse to shoot robots. Perhaps the closest the missions ever get to really having that cinematic feel of the trailers is the final part of the first Rio mission, where you invade an enemy aircraft and fight the Bakugan boss.
Dude, it's a Bakugan! Look at that! That was a Bakugan! Remember those things?
But unfortunately, this boss isn't very engaging either. In my experience, it only has a couple of attacks. A barrage of missiles, and a charge so telegraphed, the average Cocomelon viewer could see it coming. In fact, the first Rio mission has been around since 2019, and has been relatively unchanged. But, the few things they did change have been a total downgrade across the board. Looking at old footage, you can see that the final battle in the reactor looked much more action-packed, and we got to see a glimpse of what could have been with these cool Borderlands-esque chests with loot that you could equip to fight the robots. Having something as simple as these equipment chests could have made the missions much more interesting, allowing you to change your approach every playthrough. But instead, what we got was boring and predictable. Every time you play a mission, it will be the exact same. The objectives will be the same, in the same place, and every enemy will spawn in the same place. Everything will be the same. Imagine if these missions had some element of RNG, randomized objective locations, switch up the positions of health packs around the map, change up where the enemies can spawn, catch players by surprise and force them out of their comfort zone by making risky plays. Payday 2 is a game that does this really well, changing up the map every time you play it so no two runs are exactly the same. Ironically, the only PvE mission that comes close to getting this right is the free Underworld mission. In the mission, you need to fetch batteries from around the map while defending a large objective. The batteries spawn in random locations, so you need to make the risky choice of who has to fetch the battery and who has to defend the objective from the robots. One of the variations of this mission also involves playing while homing missiles lock onto you every couple of seconds. But, the same missiles can also damage the enemies, forcing you to make the simple choice of just dodging the missile, or going for a risky play and getting up close to the enemies so the missile can hit them as well. This on-the-fly decision-making is the sort of thing Blizzard should be trying to do, but the invasion missions are so static and lifeless, it makes you wonder why they haven't improved since Junkenstein. But what the mission lacks in maps and objectives, it could make up for with interesting enemies and encounters. However, the PvE falters here as well. Throughout the entirety of the PvE missions, you are going to be fighting the same basic robots. And these robots, for the most part, aren't very interesting at all. They just stand there and fire at you. They will not dodge your attacks, they will not try to use the terrain or cover to their advantage. These enemies aren't challenges to overcome and they aren't rewarding to defeat. They simply exist to soak bullets. It's disappointing too because a lot of the tech Blizzard initially showed for these enemies looked genuinely exciting. Originally, you used to be able to fling the bodies of the robots into each other, knocking them all back, or stagger groups of enemies by knocking them into each other like bowling pins. But after excitingly using Brigitta's whip flail to try and do this in-game, it unfortunately just isn't a feature in the game. Blizzard also showed a preview of the robots being able to shoot each other and wipe out entire groups. Imagine playing a character like Widowmaker and strategically sniping one robot that would create the best chain reaction to take down an entire horde of incoming robots. Now that sounds badass. The only cool feature that Blizzard did keep was the ability to dismember the robot's limbs. However, in-game, there's not really a purpose to doing that, as you can just aim for the center mass and achieve the same result. The only use I got out of this feature was blowing the cannons off the artillery enemy. I mean, look at this shot from the trailer. I want to be a gorilla ripping robot chunks apart and throwing them at the wall. I want to go full on Travis the Chimp on these robots. but nothing in the game even comes close to feeling this good. There's very little strategy or planning when it comes to taking down the enemies aside from just shooting them harder, and as a result, every encounter feels samey and drab. However, there's one enemy in the PvE you encounter that I think actually works, and it's the Stalker enemy. It's essentially this game's version of Left 4 Dead's Smoker, grabbing out-of-position players and dragging them inwards to deal a fatal blow. Something I noticed while playing as Bastion is that if I was dragged inwards by a Stalker, I could use my Sticky Grenade ability to knock her back and release me, saving myself. This forced me to make the choice between having a high burst damage option at my disposal or keeping it as a safety net in case I get dragged by a Stalker. These are the types of choices that these missions should be forcing me to make. Actual strategy instead of just being the one to shoot the robots harder. However, it's hard to keep me on my toes when replaying the missions because every mission plays out the exact same every time. The same exact enemies will spawn in the same exact place every time without fail, which causes the enemies to be predictable as well. This game desperately needs a system like Left 4 Dead's Game Director. To those who are unaware, the Game Director is a system that will tailor the spawns of enemies to your performance. If the team is doing well, the game will spawn a horde of zombies to challenge the players. Or if a player runs off by themselves, maybe the game will spawn a special infected to trap the player, forcing the team to stick together. On top of this, every time you play a Left 4 Dead campaign, the enemy spawns will be different every time, so the game is never predictable. Despite Left 4 Dead being a very simple game, the Game Director makes each mission insanely replayable and fun years after the game has come out. The closest I came to being caught off guard was the free Underworld missions, where sometimes in the place of an artillery enemy, it would spawn a crusher instead. Again, why is the only passable mission the free one? With the predictable missions, boring enemies, and lack of skills to switch up how you play, there's no reason to come back to the PvE when you finish, unless you want to experience what the missions are like with a different character, or experience what the game is like on a harder difficulty. But the way Blizzard implemented difficulties in the PvE is the most cookie-cutter way they possibly could have. Really, the only substantial changes are that enemies deal and take more damage, they increase the amount of time it takes to be revived, and on Legendary, you only get one attempt at the mission before restarting from the beginning. Turning the enemies into even more of a bullet sponge does not make for a great challenge. These video games are very different on a fundamental level, but allow me to make a comparison to Terraria. In Terraria's Expert mode, the bosses and enemies will have unique attacks and phases compared to normal mode. And there's items and rewards you can exclusively earn in Expert mode that will help on your journey. This forces you to switch up how you fight the boss and challenges your mechanical skill. And when you finish, you are rewarded for the extra work you put in to overcome the challenge. In Overwatch, the enemies will do the same exact thing, just with tweaked numbers, which doesn't make me want to return to overcome the challenge. I beat most of the missions on Expert mode, and I see no real incentive to beat the missions on Legendary for anything other than bragging rights. That is, if you even can. Notice how I said I beat most of the missions on Expert mode, because there's one mission that I just couldn't beat on Expert, and it was the Gothenburg mission. Despite the PvE only being a few weeks old, I couldn't find a full team on Expert mode for this mission if my life depended on it. Which means, after a lengthy queue time, Blizzard would just stick me with AI NPCs. And this was the most infuriating and unfair experience I had while playing. I was actually excited for this mission too, because I heard it was the best of the bunch, and I also got to play as Bastion, who's my main. But all I got served was an ice-cold dish of pain with a basil garnish. The first time I played this mission was with my pal Verno, but we were stuck with 2 AI bots as allies, and it became clear pretty quickly how excruciating this was gonna be. The first problem we encountered was this part of the mission where you battle robots in this pretty long sightline. And there's this enemy called a vulture that creates a circle that disables your cooldowns. And when your AI teammates walk into that circle, they just immediately give up and stand still, allowing themselves to be killed by the robots. Look at this clip I got, where the Torbjorn AI just starts busting it down white boy style in the circle and gets us all killed. Another problem with this encounter is that 2 of the characters you can play as in this mission are melee characters, and the AI doesn't really know what to do with this long sightline. So oftentimes, they just wander around like a lost child in Walmart. But that's just the start, because if you can make it past this fight, no thanks to the AI bots, you encounter the Titan robot. And what the Titan robot does is fire missiles that land on the ground and deal splash damage. I don't know why, but the AI teammates will not even attempt to shield or dodge these missiles. They will simply accept fate and be obliterated every time there's a barrage. You think you would figure that out before making multiple fully polished and playable maps? Look, he's just standing there!
I don't mean to alarm you, but our Torbjorn almost died from that.
At least he was trying to dodge him. I can respect dying trying to dodge him. And if you can make it past these missiles by the skin of your teeth, helping your AI teammates up every 5 seconds, you are taken to Torbjorn's workshop, where you defend against multiple waves of robots. And it's during this fight that the AI bots will just turn their brains off and go full goblin mode. One time, while defending the objective, AI Reinhardt decided to ditch the team and go all the way back to the beginning of the mission, leaving the rest of us to die. Another time while I was downed, AI Torbjorn stun-locked me while trying to revive me, which lost us the mission. It got so bad, I gave up on trying to beat it on expert mode and changed it to the hard difficulty. And since we were put with actual breathing organic humans, we won on the first try. So for the love of God, if you're dead set on playing the Overwatch PvE on anything higher than Rugrats baby mode, you better have a full squad or you will suffer as I have. That is, if you even want to experience the gameplay. By far the best part of the experience is the visuals. Despite everything, the art team for Overwatch is still doing an amazing job. Gothenburg, despite still giving me nightmares, is a visually great map. Same goes for the other missions. The robots, despite not making for very good enemies, have great visual design, especially the Titan, and I am still sad that I couldn't cop that LEGO set. The most well-rounded part of the experience is the cutscenes. Getting to see the characters interact in canon for the, first time ever was cool to see. And despite the occasional Marvel tier snarky quip, the heroes are just as charismatic as ever. I do have small issues, like the leader of Null Sector is built up to be this mysterious big bad villain, but he's been playable since December. And the fact that all the cutscenes are drenched in this grand orchestral score Nolan style kinda ruins the tone of some scenes. Blizzard is damn good at making trailers, but when they're trying to make a full cinematic story, it kinda feels like one long trailer. So for $15, you get 3 missions that are about a half hour in length each. Say you were to spend that money on a game like Left 4 Dead for $10. In that game, you get 16 official replayable campaigns, multiple game modes that shake up the gameplay even more, and you can mod the game to your heart's content. Granted, Left 4 Dead has been out for years and started with less content, but that's a one-time payment. You are going to have to pay for every new installment of Overwatch PvE for a fraction of the content. In what actual world is this worth 15 God-blessed American dollars? It used to be free. Maybe if you lived on fucking Mars this is a good deal, but I'm an Earthling, man. $15 is a goddamn highway robbery. After experiencing all the ups and downs over Overwatch's lifespan and seeing just how much of a downgrade the current PvE is compared to what we were promised, it's no surprise that after Overwatch 2 was added to Steam, in just a few days it became the most negatively reviewed game on the entire platform. Yet I still hear the sentiment that this has all been some coordinated review bomb by TF2 fanboys, or that Overwatch content creators are to blame for creating a negative aura around the game. But the thing is, Overwatch promised something great, and what we got was a bare-bones experience masquerading as the thing that we were promised. After all the letdowns and scams Blizzard pulled on their fanbase, it's no wonder that the second Blizzard gave their fanbase a platform to speak their mind, the fans turned on them. Blizzard earned their reputation. You don't go from winning Game of the Year to worst game of all time by making some small little oopsie daisies. I voiced my mind on Twitter about this multiple times now, and I've had some very interesting interactions with Twitter people. Here's one I had. Still beating a dead horse for numbers. And here I thought us TF2 players couldn't get any more desperate for content. TF2 players so desperate for content, they're making videos that aren't even about TF2. Some people will do anything for virtual numbers and to make money in a community that they trap themselves in, and it shows. A community I'm so trapped in, I'm going to make a video that has nothing to do with said community. Guys, have I mentioned TF2 once in this entire video? Oh, and how could I forget this one? Here's a guy who's mad I never made a video about Overwatch until recently. He told me I should have been making videos in 2017 at the game's peak in order to have an opinion on it. I told him I didn't even have a YouTube channel back then, and he just hits me with interesting. And the guy below him is like, bro is cooking nothing. Now you might be saying to yourself, TheWhat, why are you debating people on Twitter? And my answer to that is, because baiting people this hard is really funny. So now you're probably like, TheWhat, wasn't this video supposed to be about Overwatch 2 PvE? And to that I say, yeah, good point, I guess I better get back to the point. I was really excited for Overwatch PvE, and after experiencing it for myself, it cemented the fact that being an Overwatch fan is like having to repeatedly experience your worst nightmares coming true, as Blizzard can't help but make the worst possible choice at every corner. I know I hardly spent any time in this video complaining about the monetization, so let's do it one last time, for old time's sake. Blizzard recently added a skin to the shop that's just a reskin of an old Battle Pass skin for $26. And it comes with a highlight intro where you can see D.Va T-posing on the ground. $26! Holy fuck!